The tablets of the covenant, written by the very finger of God, were raised high. Then came the sound of stones shattering against rock. They lay in pieces in the dust. And Aaron, the high priest, stood paralyzed, knowing he had set this destruction in motion. But how did it all go so terribly wrong? 40 days earlier, Mount Sinai was shrouded in fire, smoke, and the terrifying presence of God. Moses had walked straight into that storm, and he had not come back. The Israelite camp below grew restless. The people watched the mountain with growing dread. At first, they prayed. They remembered the thunder and lightning that had accompanied the giving of the law. But as days turned to weeks, the silence from the mountain felt like abandonment. Whispers became demands. The fear of the unknown was about to give birth to a terrible mistake. A delegation of elders, their faces etched with desperation, pushed through the crowd toward Aaron's tent.
Aaron, you must hear us. Moses has vanished, and we cannot wait any longer. Make us gods who will go before us. We need something we can see.
The memory of Egypt was a poison. The people yearned for a god they could touch, a god that demanded nothing but a glance.
You speak of making gods. The Lord alone brought us out of Egypt. Have you forgotten so quickly?
We remember the plagues, Aaron, but we also remember the gold statues of the Egyptians. Their gods were real to them.
The elders murmured their agreement. A lifetime of Egyptian slavery had left them unable to trust an invisible god.
He speaks truth about their fear. But if I refuse, they might do something far worse.
The cries of the people grew louder. They had tasted victory at the Red Sea, but without Moses. That memory was fading. The weight of a nation's panic pressed down on Aaron's shoulders, and for the first time, his conviction wavered. Aaron knew the law. He had seen the fire on Sinai, but the roar outside his tent was a different fire.
Maybe a visible symbol could redirect their worship. Keep them from complete apostasy.
The elders could see the fear in his eyes, and they pressed harder.
Peace, Zimri. Let me think. Perhaps there is a way to calm them without abandoning the Lord.
But the clamor grew. Fists pounded on tent posts. The word Egypt was shouted like a promise. Aaron saw no way out. A compromise felt safer than the violence brewing outside.
Take the gold earrings from your wives and your sons and daughters, and bring them to me.
The crowd roared its approval. Hands tore at lobes, ripping gold from flesh without a moment's hesitation. Baskets overflowed. The spoils of Egypt, once a sign of plunder, now payment for a new god. Aaron looked at the gleaming pile and felt the weight of his choice. There was no turning back now. Aaron melted the earrings in a crucible, the gold hissing and popping in the flames. He poured the molten gold into a mold, his face lit by the furnace glow. Then, with a graving tool, Aaron carved the shape of a calf. The idol gleamed under the desert sun. The idol reflected the firelight, and the people gasped with wonder.
These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt.
The words struck like a hammer. Aaron flinched but did not stop them. Aaron built an altar before the calf, then turned to the cheering masses with a troubled voice.
Tomorrow shall be a festival to the Lord.
He had meant to bend the worship back to Yahweh, but the people heard only the idol. The golden calf now stood on its pedestal, a terrible answer to a terrible answer to a terrified nation. The next morning, the people rose before dawn to offer burnt offerings on the altar. They brought fellowship offerings, and the smoke rose thick into the desert sky. Then they sat down to eat and drink. Laughter and shouts soon drowned out any sense of reverence. As the wine flowed, the music grew wilder. The dancing turned from ritual to something darker. Men and women cast aside restraint. The camp became a whirlpool of flesh and gold. Aaron watched from the edge of the crowd, his face pale. This was not what he had intended.
I have opened a door that I cannot close.
The golden calf seemed to draw their eyes, its gleaming surface reflecting their twisted joy. What had begun as a desperate compromise had become a full-blown pagan orgy, right there at the foot of Sinai. And while the people danced, the God of Israel was watching from the mountain, high on Sinai. The cloud of God's presence thickened with a terrible silence.
Go down, for your people, whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way I commanded them. They have made for themselves a molten calf and worshipped it and sacrificed to it. Now therefore let me alone, that my wrath may burn hot against them and I may consume them. But I will make of you a great nation.
The offer hung in the air, an escape from a faithless people. Joshua, standing nearby, could feel the ground tremble with divine fury. The God who had split the sea was ready to erase an entire nation with a word, but Moses did not yet speak. The fate of Israel rested on a single heartbeat of silence.
O Lord, why does your wrath burn hot against your people, whom you brought out of Egypt with great power and a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say, with evil intent he brought them out, to kill them in the mountains? Turn from your fierce anger and relent from this disaster against your people. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, to whom you swore by your own self.
He was pleading with the God of the universe to change his mind for the sake of his name and his covenant. The silence that followed was heavier than fire. The clouds stilled.
I have pardoned according to your word. But truly, as I live, and as all the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord, none of those who despised me shall see the land I swore to their fathers. But my servant Moses, I will fulfill what I have promised.
The nation was spared annihilation, but the reckoning was not over. Moses had won intercession, not full forgiveness. Moses and Joshua began their descent. The heavy tablets clutched against Moses' chest. The silence of the mountain giving way to a distant rumble. The sound first came as a rumble, then shouts, then the unmistakable beat of drums.
There is a noise of war in the camp.
Moses stopped, his face hardening. He had heard such sounds before, in the festivals of Egypt.
It is not the sound of victory, nor of defeat. It is the sound of singing that I hear.
The terrible truth settled over them. The people were not under attack. They were worshiping the idol, their voices raised in ecstatic song. Joshua's hand moved to his sword, but Moses' grief was colder than any blade.
I pleaded for their lives, and yet they are dancing around a golden idol.
They pressed on, the noise growing louder with every step, the air thick with the scent of roasted meat and the sour stench of wine. Then they rounded the final ridge, and the camp came into full view, a heaving mass of bodies before a gleaming image. And there it was, the golden calf, gleaming on its pedestal, surrounded by a whirlwind of dancing, drunken bodies. Moses' face drained of all expression, then hardened into a mask of cold fury.
My own brother is leading them in this abomination.
His knuckles whitened on the stone tablets. The words of the covenant felt like an indictment in his hands. The music was a mockery of the sacred hymns. Every drumbeat struck like a hammer on his heart.
They have thrown away the covenant before I even brought it down the mountain.
The fire of Sinai that had not consumed the bush now burned in his chest, a righteous fury. Joshua saw the change and stepped back, his own hand falling away from his sword. Every laugh from the camp below was a betrayal. Every shout of praise to the calf was a declaration of war against God. Moses stood motionless, but the storm inside him was about to break, and the tablets, the very words of God, were still in his hands. Moses strode down the slope, the tablets heavy in his grip. The roar of the festival drowned all thought. With a cry that tore from his throat, he lifted the stone tablets high above his head. He hurled them down with all his strength, the weight of broken faith behind the throw. The tablets, the very words of God, shattered against the rocks. Fragments flew. A shard cut Aaron's robe, and he flinched as the sound echoed through the valley. The music died. Dancers froze. Only the shattered pieces moved, glittering in the sun. Aaron stared at the wreckage, his face pale. He would hear that sound forever. The golden calf still gleamed, but no one dared breathe. Then Moses' eyes found Aaron. The silence was worse than the shattering, and Aaron knew no gold could buy an excuse that would matter now.
What did this people do to you, that you have brought such great sin upon them?
Aaron's tongue felt thick. He bowed his head low.
Let not the anger of my Lord burn hot. You know the people, that they are set on evil.
He gestured weakly toward the calf, his voice trembling.
They said to me, "Make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, we don't know what has become of him."
Then came the lie, words that would echo in shame for generations.
So I said to them, "Let any who have gold take it off." They gave it to me, and I threw it into the fire, and out came this calf.
He didn't mention the graving tool. He didn't mention the mold. Moses stared at his brother, his eyes blazing with a grief deeper than rage.
You carved it with your own hands, and now you blame the fire.
Moses turned away from his brother, his eyes fixed on the gleaming idol. He seized the golden calf and dragged it toward the fire pit. He threw the idol into the flames, and the gold began to warp and melt. When only charred metal remained, Moses took a stone and ground it to fine powder. He scattered the dust on the water and made the people drink.
The gold you worshipped will pass through your stomach like shame.
Cups were forced into trembling hands. The taste of their sin was bitter on their tongues. Aaron watched from a distance, his knees weak, his shame now complete. The people drank, some gagging, others weeping. The golden calf was now filth. Moses stood over them, his silence heavier than judgment. The idol was dead, but the reckoning had only begun. Moses walked to the entrance of the camp, the crowd parting before him like sheep before a lion.
Whoever is for the Lord, come to me.
The words cut through the silence. Faces turned to the ground, eyes avoided his gaze.
We saw the fire on Sinai. We will not betray the Lord again.
Then one man stepped forward, the Levite commander, and behind him, the entire tribe of Levi.
We are for the Lord.
The other tribes remained still, their silence a confession of guilt. Moses looked at the Levites, his expression a mix of pain and resolve. They drew their swords and stood at attention, the blades catching the harsh desert sun. The line was drawn. Israel was now divided between the faithful and the guilty. Moses raised his hand over the Levites, and his voice carried across the dead silence.
Thus says the Lord God of Israel, each of you put your sword on his side. Go back and forth from gate to gate throughout the camp, and every man kill his brother, his companion, his neighbor.
The command fell like a hammer blow. Some Levites flinched, others paled.
We must obey God rather than men, even if those men share our blood.
He tightened his grip on the hilt until his knuckles whitened.
You heard the word of the Lord. Steel your hearts.
The Levites straightened, faces hardening into masks of duty. Moses' eyes swept over them, and he gave a single nod. Then the swords came fully unsheathed, and the killing ground awaited. The Levite commander led the charge into the heart of the camp. The first screams rose as blades found flesh. The golden calf still glinted on its pedestal, but now the ground around it was slick with blood. Aaron stumbled back against a tent pole, his hands flying to his ears. He could not bear to watch, but he could not look away.
Every stroke of the sword is an act of mercy for the camp, a purging fire.
The Levites moved like a wall of iron, striking down anyone who had not pledged loyalty. Friend turned on friend, for the command was to kill even a brother. Dust rose thick, mingling with the smoke of the destroyed altar, as the camp became a valley of judgment. And still the swords did not rest. The Lord's vengeance had only begun. Then, as if a silent horn had sounded, the Levites lowered their swords. The killing was over. Moses stood at the center of the carnage, his tunic splattered with the blood of his own people, his eyes hollow.
We have slain brother and friend, Moses. About 3,000 men lie dead.
Moses nodded slowly, his hands clenched at his sides, knuckles white.
I begged the Lord to spare Israel, yet 3,000 are gone because of my command.
Aaron pushed past a knot of weeping women and saw the full horror.
The idol I made has become a monument of death. I am their murderer.
He fell to his knees, tearing his robe, and pressed his forehead into the bloody sand. Moses did not move to comfort him. The chasm between justice and mercy was too wide. The sun began its descent, casting long shadows over 3,000 fallen men, and the Lord's silence was the heaviest sound of all.
You have sinned a great sin. Now, I will go up to the Lord. Perhaps I can make atonement for your sin.
He turned his back on the carnage and began the long climb alone, leaving the high priest still prostrate in the dust.
3,000 men, because I could not say no. The Lord will strike me down for this, and I deserve it.
Moses climbed higher, the weight of the people's sin pressing heavier with each step.
How can I face the Lord with the blood of his covenant still wet on my hands?
The divine cloud atop the mountain pulsed with a distant, angry red. Below, Aaron remained motionless, listening to the sound of his brother's footsteps fade into the darkness. Israel's last hope was climbing into the fire, and Aaron could only wait. Moses reached the summit, the cloud boiling with divine fury. He fell to his knees.
O Lord, these people have sinned a great sin. Yet if you will forgive their sin, but if not, please blot me out of your book.
The silence that followed was heavier than thunder. Then God's voice, deep as an earthquake.
Whoever has sinned against me, I will blot out of my book. But go now, lead the people to the place I told you of. My angel shall go before you. Nevertheless, in the day when I visit, I will visit their sin upon them.
Then the Lord sent a plague on the people, a judgment beyond the sword. A shudder ran through Aaron where he knelt. He knew more death was coming.
The Lord has not forgotten. The plague is my legacy. I am cursed.
In the camp, a deep groaning rose from the tents. The plague had begun. Aaron lifted his eyes from the dust. Bodies were already being dragged away. He forced himself to stand. He walked through the rows of moaning people, stopping where a young man convulsed in the dirt. He cradled the young man's head, but there was no healing in his hands, only guilt.
Every face that twists in pain is a face I failed.
Then, from the mountain's base, Moses appeared, his face like stone, his robe still stained with yesterday's blood.
The Lord has said, I will not go up in your midst, for you are a stiff-necked people, lest I consume you on the way.
The people wailed and tore their ornaments. The plague was proof that God had withdrawn.
He is not only angry, he has departed, and I drove him away.
Aaron looked at his own hands, now stained with the blood of the sword and the sickness of the plague. The morning sun revealed the full cost. Ornaments lay scattered like fallen stars among the dead. Moses went out to the people, his voice raw. He told them to go forward, but the Lord would not be in their midst. Then, without another word, he turned and climbed toward the cloud once more, to plead for new tablets. Aaron did not follow him. He stood rooted, watching his brother vanish into the haze.
I held the fire and gold and made a lie. The covenant is broken because of me.
He walked to the pile of shattered stone that still lay at the mountain's foot. He fell to his knees and touched a fragment where the carved letters were still legible.
I should have died on that altar instead of making it.
Around him, the camp was silent. No festival music, no cries, only the sound of the desert wind through the shattered stones. The golden calf was ashes, but its shadow would stretch over Aaron for the rest of his days. Aaron remained kneeling among the broken pieces, the wind stirring the dust around him. Slowly, he reached out and picked up a jagged shard, its carved letters sharp against his palm.
These words came from God's own hand, and I shattered them like a toy.
His fingers tightened, and the edge cut into his skin. A line of blood mixed with the desert dust.
I should have stopped them. I should have died first, but I wanted to be liked. I wanted to be safe. So I made a lie out of gold.
The sun sank lower, casting his shadow long among the fragments. Aaron pressed the shard to his forehead, a sob catching in his throat. His tears fell onto the dry ground, darkening the sand where the covenant once lay whole, and he knew, with a certainty that would never leave him, that he had traded the truth of God for the approval of men. The wind swept through the camp, carrying the last echoes of a festival turned to slaughter. Aaron would never again hear the clink of gold without remembering the screams of the dying. The high priest of Israel had become a monument to the cost of cowardice. 3,000 bodies lay buried in the sand, but the weight on his soul was heavier. The golden calf was gone, but its shadow remained, a permanent stain on the covenant. Moses would return with new tablets, but the first ones, written by the finger of God, would never be whole again. And Israel learned that day that the God of Sinai demands more than fear. He demands faithfulness. The silence of the desert answered no questions. It only held the memory of broken stone and spilled blood. The story of the golden calf does not end with forgiveness. It ends with a warning, and that warning echoes from the foot of Sinai to this very day.